For so many 3D artists, anime fans, and also manga fans, creating your own 3D digital customized anime character would be a dream come true, especially if you have an app that would allow you create this stuff, use it for whatever thing you want to do, pose it the way you want, give you all of the dynamics that you would want to make use of, style it the way you want it to be, and at the end of the day, export it and use it to any platform you want. Hi guys, and welcome to askNK. In today's video, we're going to be talking about an app called VRoid Studio. And the VRoid Studio is actually made by about, I think, two Japanese guys. One's name is Shinpon and I think Nario. I'm sorry if I murdered the name, but that's what it is. And how this app works is pretty simple. All it does for you is gives you the ability to create your own digital anime avatar. So for example, you like to play with anime avatars, you love animes, but you want to create yours. This app would actually help you create yours. If you want to understand how you can get this out of here and maybe take it over to Maya or Blender and use it for your own 3D project, just sit right in while I explain. So for you to be able to get this app, or for you to be able to download this, you have to definitely go over to the website, which is www.studio.vroid.com. and when you go over here, funny thing is, once you go over here, yours would be in Japanese. So how you get this to be in English, if you want to see it in English, is if you're using a Chrome browser, or let's say you're using a browser that supports extensions, you can definitely install the Google Translate. So once you have Google Translate and you right click, you will be able to convert this from whatever language it is to English. And just reading this through English, it says if you create a character with the VRoid Studio, you can use this character as avatar for your VR and your AR. And for now, what we have here is that this app only exports .vrm extension. So .vrm extension simply means that you cannot use these for other platforms. But wait, I'm definitely going to show you how you can get this out of the studio and bring it over to Blender, and what you need to consider while you're bringing it over to Blender, the possibilities for you, and how you can get this out of Blender to something like Maya or maybe Motion Builder and all that stuff. So for you to download this app, what you need to do is you just simply scroll down here, go over to the download page, and it's definitely going to bring you over to this place where you see the VRoid Studio beta download, and you can go ahead and read out the entire thing. You can also see the previous versions that have existed before now. And the cool thing here is going to be good news for the people using Windows and Mac, but not so much for the guys using Linux, because there is no support for Linux at this point. So you can only access this if you're using a Windows or you're using a Macintosh, for example. And once you have this downloaded, you can just simply open it up. It's a free software, so it simply means that the installation might not be a problem. And how this works is once you download this, it comes in as a zip file. So you extract the zip file, you double click, and you get it working for you. So let's just simply explore this program and see what it looks like, see the cool stuffs, the wrong stuffs, the things that we think that needs to be changed, things that should be updated, and then we'll go over from here and just talk about how we can get this out of the way and work with it. So if you come over to this part, there is something that just happened, and if you pay close attention, you'll find out that to each of these parts there is a responsive or a camera that is responsible to this. So like I'm at the cloth editor. If I go back to the camera, you see that the camera switches back to either of these stuffs that I'm toggling through. So the first things first is for the eyes. We have the eyes, and you can see all of the controllers here. So in case you want to maybe narrow the eyes, you can make them narrower, and you can also come through and still texture the eyes the way you want to texture the eyes. So for example, let's say we have this face. Now we want to go ahead and texture the face. We can come through and you can start putting some paint. So let me go ahead and get a soft brush like this and pick up my pen, and let's just paint across this part. So if I come through and paint across this part with the pen, you can notice that we have more like a UV editor sort of style. You can see the entire UV, very nicely done, and we can come through and start painting on top of this model. Okay, other things that we can do is We can also look at the mouth as well, and you can notice that we have stacked layers of things that we can access. Okay, so we have stacked layers of things that we can access. If I close up the mouth and maybe come over to the part where I have like the eyebrow or maybe the iris, for example, and you know, I come through and just select this, you can see that I have the eyebrow, and I can come through and, you know, start texturing that. And for existing hairs like this, say for example you want to come through and, you know, change the position of all of this, you can just simply come through, pick them, you know, and use the points to move them around. By selecting this, by selecting the control points, you can individually come through and manipulate all of these controls. And one other thing to notice is you can see how these things don't go way past, they don't go way past the hair cage. So looking at this now, we would also notice that just right around the corner where we have this design, we also have something else called bone. The bone is just like a representation of the bones that are controlling the hair. So these are individual bones, we cannot see them now, but these are individual bones that are selected as a group. Okay, I'm going to show you how you can find that later in the video. Then the next thing which you can look out for is textures for the hair. So we've selected the hair, we're within the hair category, and now you can see that we have a place where we can come through and also paint in textures for the hair, just in case we have hair colors that we want our character to have, and let's say we're not comfortable or we are not just satisfied with the one we have here. If you go over to the body, which is also another interesting part of the entire program, we can customize the entire model. So for now, if I come over to the head, for example, and I want to change the head size, you will notice that the hair will also conform to it, because I can, you know, push the hair up, the head up and down, and you can also notice that the hair itself has dynamics that is interacting with the scale of the head. So once the head is going up and coming down, you can see that dynamics going up and down, and these are driven by joints or bones depending on the app which you're coming from. You can also notice that we have this texture button here, so it simply means that you can go ahead and texture this and do whatever you want to do with it. Finally, we have one more before we talk about how you can export this, what you can do with it, and then, you know, what are the possibilities for this to work. One of the things I would say just before I go ahead talking about this stuff is I really wish there was a physical camera that you can place, but since there's no physical camera, we can do with what we have. As simple as it sounds, this part of the entire thing is where the main magic happens. Okay, the other things are like building blocks to the magic that happens here. So let me just simply zoom out so that we can see all of this. First things you will notice is our character is blinking by default, which is really impressive. Okay, so let me just start all the way from the beginning so that we can see how all these things work. Cool. So here we have the face expression. The face expression simply works like this, just like your typical blend shape, that once you push the blend slider, you can see all of this blend shape happening. If you don't want the character to look at the camera at each point when you're moving the camera, you can simply turn this off and it would not look at the camera. You see, it's looking at that point, but once you turn this on, you can see that the eye simply adjusts and now it's looking directly at the camera. Next thing which we can do from here onwards is we can change the background color, which is something I particularly would not want to change. Okay, and then we can come over to this part that would make you wow. So how do we work with this? These are sets of animation that have been pre-designed or pre-saved, or let's say pre-recorded for characters with this bone hierarchy. So once I click on standby, you can see that the animation happens. If I click on jump, you can see our character jumps, and of course you can see that the cloth itself, you know, bounces along. If I come through and click on the other jump, and you see that happens. And speaking about the character moving, let's just go back and put it in the default. If we come over to the cloth editor, we didn't talk about this. If we come over to the cloth editor, we have this cloth editor and we basically have about 3 presets here. So I'm just clicking on this one and I can select base model, and this is the model without an outfit. So let's say you want to do a simulation, or you want to simply do a retopology of something like this, or you want to just get the model out like this for some purposes, you can go ahead and use the base model and do whatever you want to do with it. And this one presently doesn't have any it doesn't have any outfit on it, it doesn't have any cloth. Okay, so then we can go to school uniform, and you can see the very basic manga styled anime look. And the next one we have is One Piece, which is exactly what we have. And now we have one last one, which is just pants. And now it's the same thing, but now it's more like a male kind of character with the character putting on the pants. Okay, so you can choose from these to see the one that works for you. So I'm going to go back to the One Piece, and also you can increase and reduce this. For the GLIF, you can play with these as well. All of these things are relative to the cloth which you are selecting for your model. So to different models, you have different cloths and different parameters to control them. Let's get back to the camera. So here where we have the camera, you can see we have different animations. Okay, we have different animations. And then we have this other stuff that has to do with the pose. So for the pose, I'm just going to stop this animation for playing. So for the pose, if you come through and click here and switch to pose, you can see that we have a bone hierarchy that has an IK bound to it. So how do you know? Once you select this, you can see that we have this IK movement. So now we can decide to pose our character like this. So at any point when you're done, you can simply just have this and capture this pose. So if you want to save out this pose, you can simply hit the capture, and it's going to bring out the explorer, and from there you can go through and so I'm just going to save this as pose 01, and from there you can just simply maybe use it in any 2D texturing app or 2D application where you want it to be. So once you hit on capture, it's just going to make a screen capture of this. And if you're using the app, for example, and for some reason while you're using this, if I come over to the capture size, you're not getting a good resolution, you can also come here and change the quality of the resolution that you are making use of, or that you want to export your file as. It has way up to 8K, so you can export as 8K. So for the post process, let's talk about the post process real quick. So for the post process, you can do some very amazing things here. The first one is the anti-aliasing. So we can go from very low to high, so it makes it a little bit more crispy. And other things is you can add a bloom effect as well. You can add the bloom effect, and you see all of those places where we have speculars. It's going to go through and just punch in that bloom. And you can also do a bit of color grading to it. So let me just turn off the bloom, and let's just shift the hue a little bit, and now you can see we're having a different color altogether. So you can simply play with these things and see how they work for you. If they are fine for your workflow, then if you're okay with that, you can simply capture that as well. So let's just simply go back and reset this pose and have our character like this. And one thing to note is, even if you have an animation going on, when you export this out, the animation doesn't exist. Okay, that's the downside, which I think that the developers should take a good look at. Once you're exporting this, there is no animation. The animation doesn't export with it. That is one thing. Okay, so the next thing is you don't, or you cannot export to FBX, you cannot export to OBJ, you can only export to I think is VRM. Okay, so you can only export as VRM, which is the native file. And other file types that you can make use of, or which you can rename your file to, is the GLB and I think the GLP, and all of these are open source files. I'll put the links in the description, so just in case you want to read more about those open source files, you can go down there, you can click on the link and read more about that. And so the big question is, how do you export this? How do you use this for production? Why would you want to get this out? Because you like it and you want to use it for your production. So how do you get it out? So if you come through and go over to this part where we have exports, you can choose to export as the original or shrinked texture size. So we want to export this as the original texture size. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to come through. You can see how much materials we have. We have 18, we have 16 materials, and now another problem is it's going to go through and triangulate the entire thing. So you see when we're painting our textures that we had these chords or quads, depending on how you call it, but now we're going to have them as triangles. So what we do is just simply hit an export, you know, enter some details. So I'm just going to call these anime 01, and you can go through and put in all of the licensings that you want. So if you want to put in licensing for use and all of that stuff, you can go through and, you know, permit those things and select on OK. Another way you can get this out is you can simply, let's just save this. I'm just going to name this anime 01. Okay, so another way you can get this out is you can simply upload directly to the VRoid Hub. And the VRoid Hub is a cloud space where you can download models that other people have created, you know, play around with other people's model, and also upload your own model. And all of these models that you find here, they are totally free, so you can just come through, look for them, download them, and use them for whatever thing that you want to do. And how you can get access here is if you go over to the Pixiv, you can create an account at Pixiv, and from the Pixiv you can, you know, use the account here. You can see I have the same account here and I have the same account here. Now I have this object exported out. The next thing which I'm going to do is to, you know, bring out the model, and then we can go ahead and play with it. So this is the place where this model is exported out to. If I just simply do this, you can see I had one exported out earlier, and this is the pose model which we exported out just a few minutes ago. So what we can do now is I'm going to make a double copy just so I can explain something to you. If I rename this as GLB and say yes, I would be able to open this with the default Microsoft Paint, Microsoft 3D Builder, and all that. But those things we're opening them as are just stuff that we cannot probably use to animate our character. So for us to be able to get this out so that we can use it for animation, we'll bring in the big guns, and then we'll bring in Blender. So Blender is what we're going to use. For us to get this out, I'm going to come through to File, Import, and then I'm going to import the GLTF, which is the open source stuff which I talked about. So you can check the link in the description to learn more about this. And then I'm going to just simply click on this. I will navigate to the part where I have this selected. I have it here, and I'm going to just simply double click so that I can get it to open. This file will take a while for it to open, and once it does, you would notice that automatically we're losing the blend shape. We're not having the joints or the armatures are not going to be there, but the model itself and the textures are also going to be retained. So from here we can now decide to do whatever we want to do a bit of housekeeping if you choose, and then maybe export it out. And there's something I noticed about exporting things out from Blender, especially if you're exporting an FBX file which you want to use for apps like Maya and maybe 3D Studio Max. So for some reason, I don't know why, once you export, I'm using Blender 2.8. So once you're exporting your file out, or you're exporting as FBX from Blender to Maya or 3D Studio Max, for some reason it takes like a long time to load up, and even when it does, it loads up haphazardly. So the best way to get this or get your files out is you can simply export your files out as either Collada, which is .dae, or maybe as Alembic. So just like I said before we had this file loaded, you can notice that we have all our bones laying before us. Okay, so they are all laying right on our feet. Okay, so what we can do now is, since we're not going to use this, we can just simply delete this. And another problem we have now is that the hair is on the floor, so we can choose to, you know, take the hair and position it where we want. Okay, so with our hair in place, we can now simply come through and turn the shading mode on, and now you can see what we have here. You can see that we're having the textures, but then we're having some form of distortion. So just before we jump into Maya and start looking at those stuff, there is just this thing about the texture that would be bothering you, or that it's presently bothering you, and that is because the normals of the main mesh itself is not proper. So if you look at it here, you find out that we have some normals that are not proper, and that's why we're having this distorted feel of the texture. So let's just go through and go over to the modifier panel, and within the modifier panel I'm just going to select weighted normal. Okay, now you can see that that normal is looking cool. You can do the same for here, and also the same for, I'm just going to close this because we don't need that anymore, and I'm also going to do the same for this as well. All right, and now so you see you can now play with this one and go ahead, rig it, play with the textures the way you want it to be, and from there do all of those fun stuff that you probably have wanted to do long time. And just something that I would also like to put out there, if you want to use Maya and do something like this, I just went through and imported the file which we exported out from Blender. So let's look at how it looks in Maya once we bring it in. So I'm just going to simply drag in this Maya screen here. Okay, so once we bring this in, this is the file, which is the collector file that we exported from Blender. And for some reason Blender doesn't really do a good job by exporting this. I think it's something that's still under review. Probably it's going to get better, but for now this doesn't happen. Okay, so what you can do now is you can go through. You can see we still have the same normal issue here, normal issue here. We're missing textures here and missing textures here as well. This is how Blender exported it, and Maya cannot interpret the file properly. Okay, so what we can do now is we can come through, have a selection here, and go over to where we have mesh display. Okay, so we'll go to mesh display, we'll click on set to face. So it's going to set all the normals to the face, and you see we have these hard edges. We can now come through and say soften the edges, so the edges get softened. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to come through and select set to that, and also soften the edges, and you see we automatically have that. The shoes for some reason is missing. I think this has to do with the textures as well. So if you do something like this, my big advice is you need to go ahead, and let me just go ahead and make a big selection and just simply come through and do that, and also soften the edges. Okay, so if you export something like this, my big advice is you need to go through and review all of these things one after the other. I may, depending on what you guys tell me, I may go ahead and get about 1 or 2 models like this and put it for free, so that if you want to play with this, and I'm going to do my best to simply clean it up and make sure that the textures are fine, clean it up and give it to you guys so that you guys can make use of it, play with it for your personal projects and anything you want to do with it. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section, and if you like this video, if you like this tool, I would like to know if you want to try it. Is it something you want to integrate into your pipeline? Is it something you want to try and see what it looks like, if it's something you would support depending on what you want to do? I would like to know what you guys think about this tool in the comment section below, and if you like this video, simply give it a like and share with your friends. And if you're new here, you can simply click on subscribe and also turn on the notification so that you get updates once I upload a new video. And until I see you guys next time with a tutorial, review, rant, or maybe a news update, peace.